a heart-pounding psychological thriller that will keep you on the edge of your seat. When Emma Rodriguez accidentally drops her diary on a New York subway, she has no idea that Vincent Kane, a mysterious billionaire with deadly secrets, will find it. What starts as a chance encounter becomes a dangerous game of love, lies, and survival. Asterisk, tonight. We unravel a story where love clashes with secrets. Hearts are tested, and one choice can change everything. Stay until the end. You won't believe the twists. Comment your city, like, subscribe, and share with someone who believes in true love. Let's dive in. The subway car reeked of coffee, sweat, and desperation. Emma Rodriguez pressed her back against the cold metal doors, clutching her worn leather diary like a shield against the crushing weight of another morning in a city that refused to see her. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting sickly shadows across faces buried in phones, all of them running from something or toward something they'd never catch. She opened the diary to a fresh page, her pen trembling as she wrote the words she couldn't say aloud. I found another letter from them today. The threats are getting worse. They know about the forgeries, about what I did to keep the museum funded, long before Vincent discovers what kind of person he's been reading about. The train lurched, and Emma's pen skittered across the page, leaving a jagged line through her confession. 3 months ago, she'd been nothing more than a junior curator with dreams too big for her salary. Now she was a criminal, selling expertly forged pieces to private collectors while the originals hung safely in storage, funding exhibition programs for underprivileged kids who deserved to see beauty in their broken world. She justified it. At first, the museum's board cared more about profit than purpose, cutting education programs while spending millions on acquisitions that would gather dust in climate-controlled rooms. But justification felt hollow at 3 a.m. when she couldn't sleep, knowing that one mistake, one suspicious buyer, one forensic analysis could destroy everything. The conductor's voice crackled over the intercom. Next stop, 59th Street, Emma's stop. Her sanctuary and her prison, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, where she curated dreams by day and sold lies by night. As the train shuddered to a halt, bodies pressed against her from every direction. Someone's elbow jabbed her ribs. Another passenger's bag caught her messenger bag's loose clasp, and she felt something slip free and fall. No, she whispered, but the crowd swept her forward like a tide, carrying her onto the platform before she could turn back. It wasn't until she was halfway up the stairs that her hand flew to her bag, searching frantically through empty pockets. The diary was gone. The diary with every detail of her crimes, every sleepless confession, every carefully documented transaction that could send her to prison for 20 years. And worse, it contained the truth about Vincent Kane, the mysterious benefactor who'd been anonymously funding her educational programs through a shell company, the billionaire who thought he was supporting a passionate curator's noble dreams. Not knowing he was bankrolling a sophisticated art forgery operation, Emma's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the concrete steps as commuters streamed past her, their footsteps echoing like gunshots in the tunnel below. Somewhere in that metal coffin racing through the darkness, her entire life lay open for anyone to read. Anyone at all. Vincent Kane had killed 3 people in his rise to power, and not one of them haunted him as much as the woman whose diary he now held in his blood-stained hands. The leather was warm from the subway car's stifling heat, soft from years of desperate fingers clutching it like a lifeline. He'd intended to turn it in at the Lost and Found, play the Good Samaritan, add another small kindness to his carefully curated public image. But then he'd opened it, searching for a name, an address, some way to return it to its owner. Instead, he'd found his own name staring back at him. Vincent Kane's money feels clean in my hands, the elegant handwriting read, but I wonder what he'd think if he knew where it really goes. The children who benefit from his anonymous donations to our education program would lose their only chance to see beauty. If they knew their field trips were funded by forgeries I've sold to collectors who don't ask questions. Vincent's chest tightened. For 3 months, he'd been funneling money through shell companies to support some unnamed curator's passion project. Moved by reports of inner-city kids experiencing art for the first time, he'd thought he was doing something pure, something that might balance the scales of his darker deeds. The diary's owner was a criminal, just like him. He flipped through more pages, his pulse quickening with each revelation. She documented every forgery with clinical precision. A minor Picasso sketch sold to a private collector in Dubai. A small Monet study purchased by a tech mogul's wife who cared more about prestige than provenance. The money filtered directly into educational programs that the museum's board had voted to cut. "I tell myself I'm Robin Hood," one entry read, "stealing from the rich to give beauty to the poor. But at 3 in the morning, when sleep won't come, I know I'm just another criminal making excuses for doing wrong things for right reasons." Vincent recognized that insomnia, he'd lived with it for 15 years. Ever since the night he'd discovered that his business partner had been embezzling from their startup. Ever since he'd made the decision to handle the problem himself permanently, and quietly, making it look like an accident. Success in his world required blood on your hands. He'd learned that lesson early and never forgotten it. 2 more bodies had followed over the years. Competitors who'd gotten too close to his real business operations, the illegal surveillance technologies he sold to foreign governments under the table. But this diary revealed someone who'd chosen crime for noble reasons, someone who felt guilt instead of satisfaction. Someone who lost sleep over helping people instead of destroying them. He read about her loneliness, her dreams of finding someone who understood that beauty could heal broken hearts. Each word felt like a mirror reflecting parts of himself he'd thought were dead, emotions he'd buried under years of calculated ruthlessness. His phone buzzed. Robert Mills, his assistant. "Sir, the board meeting has been moved to 4 o'clock. Also, there's been some unusual activity around your offshore accounts. Nothing urgent, but worth monitoring." Vincent barely heard him. He was reading about the threats she'd been receiving, blackmail attempts from someone who'd discovered her operation. The fear bleeding through her words made his jaw clench with protective fury, an emotion he hadn't felt in over a decade. Someone was hunting her. And Vincent Kane had spent 15 years becoming very good at hunting hunters. He closed the diary and leaned back in his seat, city lights blurring past the window. For the first time in years, he had a choice to make that wasn't about money or power or survival. He could return the diary and walk away, or he could step into her dangerous world and risk everything he'd built. The smart play was obvious. The safe play was simple. But as the train pulled into a station, Vincent made the same mistake that had started his descent into darkness 15 years ago. He chose to care about someone other than himself. Emma's hand shook as she unlocked her apartment door. The weight of the day's disaster crushing her chest like a collapsed building. She'd spent 8 hours at the museum pretending everything was normal while her mind raced through scenarios of exposure, imprisonment, and the complete destruction of the only meaningful work she'd ever done. The envelope was waiting on her kitchen table. She hadn't left it there. With trembling fingers, she tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of expensive paper with an address written in careful block letters. And below it, a single line: "If you want your diary back, come alone. 8 p.m. Vincent Kane." Emma's knees gave out. She slid down the kitchen wall too. The floor, clutching the note as the full horror of her situation crystallized. Vincent Kane had her diary. Vincent Kane knew everything. The man whose money she'd been using to fund her crimes, the billionaire whose anonymous donations had made her feel less guilty about her forgeries, had been reading her deepest secrets for hours. She should run. Empty her bank account, grab her passport, disappear into the kind of life where people didn't ask questions about your past. But the children she'd been helping flashed through her mind. Marcus, who'd stood transfixed in front of a Van Gogh for 20 minutes, tears streaming down his 8-year-old face. Sarah, who'd started drawing because she'd seen how art could capture pain and transform it into beauty. At 7:45 p.m., Emma stood outside a sleek downtown restaurant, her reflection ghostly in the glass windows. She'd chosen her best dress, applied makeup to hide the exhaustion carved into her face, and prepared herself to beg for mercy from a man who could destroy her with a single phone call. The hostess led her to a private dining room where Vincent Kane sat alone at a table set for two. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe mid-30s. With dark hair and the kind of perfectly tailored suit that cost more than her monthly rent. Odd, but his eyes held shadows deeper than his age should have. Aloud, "Emma Rodriguez," he said, standing as she entered. His voice was warm, nothing like the cold intimidation she'd expected. "Thank you for coming. Where is it?" she asked, not bothering with pleasantries. He gestured to the empty chair across. From him, "Please sit. We have a great deal to discuss. Won't sit until you tell me what you want." Vincent's smile was sad, almost gentle. "I want to help you." Emma laughed, the sound bitter and sharp. "Help me. You know what I am. You know what I've done with your money. I know you've been using forged artwork sales to fund educational programs that I've been supporting through shell companies." He pulled her diary from his jacket and placed it carefully on the table between them. "I also know someone's been threatening you. What I don't know is why you haven't come to me for help." The restaurant's soft lighting cast shadows across his face, and Emma caught something familiar in his expression. The same haunted look she saw in her own mirror every morning, the weight of secrets that made sleep impossible. "Why would you help me?" she whispered. "I'm a criminal. So am I." The words hung in the air between them like a confession at an altar. Emma sank into the chair, studying his face for signs of deception, but found only a terrible honesty that made her chest tight. "The threats you've been receiving," Vincent continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Do you know who's behind them?" Emma's throat closed. She'd hoped he hadn't read that far, hadn't seen the entries where she'd written about the photographs that had been slipped under her door. Pictures of her meeting with collectors, entering the museum's storage areas after hours, carefully removing pieces that would be replaced with forgeries so perfect that most experts would never notice. "Someone who wants money to stay quiet," she managed. "Someone who knows about the forgeries." Vincent leaned forward and she caught a glimpse of something dangerous in his eyes. "Someone who doesn't understand that you're under my protection now." The casual violence in his tone should have terrified her. Instead, it sent an unexpected thrill through her chest, the first time in months that she'd felt anything other than fear and guilt. "Your protection?" she asked. "I've been looking for someone like you for a very long time, Emma. Someone who understands that sometimes you have to break the rules to do what's right." His fingers drummed against the table, a nervous gesture that made him seem almost human. "Someone who knows the cost of caring about people in a world that punishes compassion." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs.
"What exactly are you offering? Partnership?"
"I'll handle your blackmail problem permanently. You continue your work with the children, but now you'll have unlimited resources and complete protection." He paused, his gaze intense. "In exchange, you help me with certain business ventures that require someone with your particular skills in art authentication and acquisition." "What kind of business ventures?" Vincent's smile was sharp enough to cut. "The kind that governments paid very well for and never ask questions about." Emma stared at her diary lying between them, its worn leather holding every secret that had been slowly killing her. She could walk away, disappear, start over with nothing. Or she could step deeper into darkness with a man whose eyes held the same desperate loneliness that had been eating her alive for years. "If I say yes," she whispered, "there's no going back, is there?" "There never was, Emma. Not for people like us." She reached across the table and placed her hand over his, feeling calluses that spoke of work more dangerous than board meetings and stock options. "What happened to the person who's been threatening me?" Vincent's fingers intertwined with hers, warm and steady, and stained with blood she couldn't see. "You don't need to worry about them anymore." 6 months later, Emma stood in the private gallery of Vincent's penthouse, surrounded by stolen masterpieces, worth more than some countries' GDP, and realized she'd fallen in love with a monster. The Rothko hanging behind Vincent's desk wasn't supposed to exist. It had been destroyed in a warehouse fire 3 years ago, along with 12 other pieces that were now decorating the walls of his apartment like trophies from a war only he understood. Emma had helped authenticate half of them, her expertise in art history making her invaluable in his expanding network of international clients. who paid premium prices for pieces that couldn't be traced. The senator's wife has agreed. To our terms, Vincent said, ending a phone call as he approached her. His hand found the small of her back, a gesture that had become natural over months of working together, sleeping together, building something between them that felt like salvation and damnation in equal measure. Emma leaned into his touch despite the cold dread spreading through her chest. Which pieces does she want? 3 impressionist works. It's nothing too famous, nothing that will be missed. His fingers traced along her spine, sending shivers through her body even as her mind recoiled from what they were planning. The exchange happens tomorrow night. After that, we'll have enough leverage on Senator Morrison to ensure our Middle Eastern contracts go through without congressional interference. The children's laughter echoed from the tablet on Vincent's desk. A live feed from the museum's education center, where 30 kids from the Bronx were experiencing art for the first time. Emma had told herself that their joy justified everything else, that the dirty money flowing into educational programs balanced the scales of their crimes. But the scales had been tipping for months, and tonight they'd finally crashed to the floor. Vincent, she said, her voice barely steady. I need to tell you something. He turned to face her fully, and she saw the man she'd fallen for. Brilliant, damaged, capable of tenderness that made her forget the blood on his hands. What? Is it? Emma's throat closed around the words she had to say. For weeks, she'd been meeting with FBI agent Sarah Chen, feeding information about Vincent's operation in exchange for immunity and a chance to disappear into witness protection. It had started as survival, a way to save herself when she'd realized how deep Vincent's criminal network ran. But somewhere along the way, it had become something worse. It had become love. Love for the version of Vincent who held her during nightmares, who watched her work with the children with something like wonder in his eyes, who'd shown her that she wasn't alone in carrying the weight of necessary sins. The Vincent who didn't exist, who was just another lie she'd told herself to justify the unjustifiable. There's a problem with tomorrow's exchange, she said, instead taking the coward's path one more time. Vincent's expression sharpened. What kind of problem? Think we're being watched. There's been unusual activity around the museum, people asking questions about my work schedule. It wasn't entirely a lie. Agent Chen had mentioned increased surveillance, though Emma knew it was Vincent being watched, not her. The FBI was closing. In following the trail of evidence she'd been carefully laying for months, I'll handle it, Vincent said, his voice taking on the cold edge she'd learned to fear. You don't need to worry about anything except the authentication tomorrow night. Emma nodded, hating herself for the relief in her voice. Of course. But as Vincent's arms wrapped around her, as he pressed his lips to her forehead with the gentle affection that had become her addiction, Emma felt her phone buzz with a text from Agent Chen. Operation moves tomorrow. Be ready. Vincent pulled back, studying her face with those dark eyes that saw too much. You're trembling. I'm cold, she lied. He smiled, the expression soft and trusting, and so beautiful it made her chest ache. I love you, Emma Rodriguez. I never thought I'd say that to anyone and mean it. The words hit her like physical blows. Vincent, I know we've done terrible things. I know what we are. But somehow, with you, it feels like we might have a chance at something real. His hands cupped her face, thumbs brushing away tears she didn't realize were falling. When this is all over, when we have enough money and power to disappear, what? Do you say we find somewhere quiet? Maybe keep helping kids? But legally this time. Emma's phone buzzed again. Another text from Agent Chen. Extraction team in position. Give us the signal when you're ready. She looked into Vincent's eyes, seeing the future he was painting for them, the redemption he thought they could earn together. Tomorrow night, FBI agents would surround the exchange point. Vincent would be arrested, charged with crimes that would put him away for life. And Emma would disappear into a new identity, carrying the memory of this moment, this last lie, whatever years she had left. I'd like that, she whispered, and meant it more than any truth she'd ever told. Vincent kissed her then, soft and desperate, and full of a love that would die tomorrow night, along with everything else. When he pulled away, his smile was radiant. With hope, get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow changes everything. Emma nodded, watching him walk away, memorizing the line of his shoulders, the way he moved with predatory grace, even in moments of tenderness. Tomorrow would indeed change everything, and she would be the one to destroy them both. The warehouse smelled like betrayal and rain. Emma stood in the shadows between shipping containers, watching Vincent supervise the final preparations for the exchange that would never happen. FBI agents were positioned throughout the building, invisible in the darkness, waiting for her signal. Agent Chen's voice whispered through her earpiece. Target acquired. Confirm when ready. Vincent moved with fluid confidence, checking the authentication equipment Emma had set up, ensuring the stolen impressionist works were displayed to their best advantage for Senator Morrison's wife. He'd worn his best suit tonight, the charcoal gray one that made his eyes look almost silver in the warehouse's harsh lighting. He looked beautiful. He looked doomed. Emma, he called softly, and she emerged from the shadows on unsteady legs. Everything's perfect. In 2 hours, we'll have enough leverage to disappear wherever we want. She forced a smile, her hand drifting to the panic button. Agent Chen had sewn into her jacket. One press, and Vincent's world would end. One press, and she'd be free to start over. Clean slate, new identity, no more blood on her hands. But freedom felt like another kind of death. Vincent, she said, her voice breaking despite her efforts to control it. Before they get here, I need you to know something. He turned from adjusting a spotlight on a Monet water lily painting, concern creasing his features. What's wrong? Look, I'm FBI. The words hit the air like gunshots. Vincent went very still, his hand frozen on the light's adjustment knob. The warehouse seemed to hold its breath around them. Did you say? Emma's fingers found the panic button, but she couldn't press it. Not yet. Not while he was looking at her like she'd just torn his heart out through his chest. I've been working with Agent Sarah Chen for 3 months. Everything you've told me, every deal we've made, every crime we've committed together, I've reported. It all, her voice sounded hollow, mechanical, nothing like the woman who'd whispered, I love you in his arms just hours ago. They're here tonight. They're waiting for my signal. Vincent's expression went through several changes. Shock, disbelief, understanding, and finally a terrible calm that made Emma's blood turn to ice. When he spoke, his voice was conversational, almost pleasant. How long have you known? Known what? That I've been on to you since the beginning. The warehouse tilted around Emma. What? Vincent smiled, and it was nothing like the gentle expressions she'd fallen in love with. This smile belonged to the man who'd killed 3 people and felt no remorse, the predator who'd survived 15 years in a world that ate the weak. Did you think I built an empire by trusting people who fell into my lap too conveniently? Your diary was never lost, Emma. I had my people place it on that subway car after weeks of surveillance.
I knew you.
You were FBI before you knew it yourself. Emma's hand clenched around the panic button, but Vincent continued talking, his voice hypnotic in its calm certainty. Agent Chen isn't FBI. She works for a competing organization that wanted access to my client list. You've been feeding information to the same people who've been trying to kill me for 2 years? He took a step toward her, and she saw pity in his eyes. They're not here to arrest me, Emma. They're here to eliminate all the witnesses. The warehouse erupted into gunfire. Emma hit the ground as bullets whined overhead, concrete chips exploding around her. She could hear shouting, running footsteps, the sharp crack of assault rifles that definitely didn't belong to FBI agents. Through the chaos, she saw Vincent moving with deadly precision, a gun appearing in his hand as if by magic. Emma, his voice cut through the noise. The back exit. Now, she didn't think. She ran toward his voice, toward the monster who'd lied to her, used her, manipulated every emotion she'd thought was real. Bullets traced lines of death around her feet as she sprinted between shipping containers, her lungs burning with terror and exertion. Vincent caught her at the warehouse's rear exit, his arm wrapping around her waist as he dragged her toward a black SUV idling in the alley. She could feel blood soaking through his shirt, see the grimace of pain he was trying to hide. You're hit, she gasped. I'll live. He shoved her into the passenger seat and gunned the engine, tires screaming against asphalt as they roared away from the warehouse. The question is whether you will. Emma stared at his profile as he navigated through back streets with the skill of someone who'd planned escape routes his entire adult life. Why save me? I betrayed you. I would have sent you to prison because you were trying to save those kids. Because even when you thought I was a monster, you still loved me. Vincent's jaw clenched, and when he looked at her, his eyes held the same desperate loneliness that had first drawn her to his diary. And because I've been in love with you since the first day I read about your dreams, where are we going? Away. Far enough that Chen's people can't follow. Remote enough that we can disappear. He reached across the seat and took her hand, his fingers stained with blood and shaking with pain. I've been moving money offshore for years, preparing. For this day, we can help children somewhere else, somewhere clean. Emma looked down at their intertwined fingers, at the blood and lies and love that bound them together. Behind them, sirens wailed through the night, hunting predators who'd already vanished into darkness. Ahead lay uncertainty, exile, a future, built on the ashes of everything they'd destroyed. I don't even know who you really are, she whispered. Neither do I anymore. Vincent's smile was sad, broken, beautiful. Maybe we can figure it out together. As the city lights faded behind them, Emma thought about the children who would continue receiving anonymous donations from offshore accounts, funded now by love instead of crime. It wasn't redemption people like them didn't get to be redeemed. But it was something. It was a chance to build beauty from the ruins of who they used to be, and sometimes, for the damned and the lost, a chance was enough. The end.